I have kind of a love-hate relationship with Lightroom. I love all the tools that Lightroom has and the capabilities that it offers. But what I'm really starting to resent is the subscription model that Adobe, never really sure which way you say that, Adobe have. I use a couple of pieces of their software, and I'm spending probably about £30 a month as a subscription, just so that I get updates to their software, and I'm starting to resent it a bit. So I've been looking around for quite a long time at other bits of software, and for the past 4, 5, 6 months, I've been using Luminar, which, unlike Adobe, once you buy it, that's it. You pay the one-off fee, and it's yours. The software is yours. There's no subscription model. So I thought it was about time I did a review of my kind of initial findings. I would say that kind of very grateful to the people who create Luminar. They've offered a discount code. So if you check out below and you're interested in Luminar, there's a discount code, Damien Waters. If you use that code when you're buying the software, you'll get a discount on your purchase. So that's great, and thanks to them for offering that. But I thought I'd do a review and kind of give you my honest thoughts of what Luminar is like and what I like about it, and some of the things I'd like to see improved. So let's get into that, and we'll have a look.
The first thing you notice when you open up Luminar is just how familiar it looks. There's a layout that is kind of common across photo processing software. So obviously you've got your large image here and your tools down the side. It's quite intuitive. I think they've done a good job of supporting people to switch to Luminar and not have too many problems in making the move across. I would just say I'm going to focus on the kind of the editing tools, but there's also, if you look in the top right hand corner, there's the library option and the info option. Maybe I'll do kind of a separate video about the library option, but I'm going to focus on kind of the editing tools and kind of run through those. The other thing I should say is I'm not going to talk about the portrait tools because I'm not a portrait photographer, so I don't use them. I've never used them. So if you're a portrait photographer and you've used them, be interesting to get your take. But if we look across the tools here, this is where you can edit. But Luminar has a kind of a built-in trick that can help you do a really quick edit. So if we come up towards the left hand of the panel, there's a button there that says Looks. If I click on Looks, it brings up what are essentially some preset edits for images. There are options, so there's a little title here that says Luminar Looks. If I click the word next to it, you see here that there's the preset, there's landscape, street, aerial, portrait, and so on, and you can add more. I'm in landscape for this purpose, so I have a kind of a range of quick looks across the bottom. So if I click on one, let's have a look. We'll try impressive, and it applies that immediately to the image. And there's a slider that you can kind of go up and down to choose how much you want that look to be applied. I've played around with it a bit. I'm not sure it'll be all that useful to me because I have my own kind of personal editing style. But it could be useful if there's, I need to do a really quick edit of a couple of images. I'll use a couple of those looks and export it, and Bob's your uncle. But for most cases, I'm not sure I'll be using it that much. But it's nice to know it's there and to have access to it. So I have an unedited image here, and I'm going to talk through the key components of 3 out of the 4 kind of editing options. There's essentials, there's creative, and there's professional. And I'll start with essentials. And I'm going to use this. The first option in essentials is light. And if I click on light, as you suspect, I get the options to alter the exposure and kind of the contrast, highlights, and so on, and etc. Now, one of the things I like about Luminar is I've made a few alterations there, and if I don't like the shadows, I just double click and it resets. But But if I've gone a bit too far, that is too far, and I want to reset the whole thing, it's just a back arrow here. Click the back arrow, resets all of them. So I like that little technique. And then just another thing, if I do make an alteration and then close that down, you'll notice that light has now turned from grey to white. I think that's a really clever thing. I can now see just with a glance that I've made some alterations under light. And as I make alterations under all these headings, they will turn from grey to white, just to let me know that I've actually done something there. I was going to reset, but I'll show you something else. Down in the bottom right hand corner, there's a little icon that looks like a clock. If you hover over it, it says history. If you click on it, your history of editing comes up. So that's quite a lot of editing. You can jump back, or just go back to the original image. It's almost like giving you the opportunity to leap back in time. So I like that. I like you can see what editing you've done and choose to take either a few steps back or go all the way back to the beginning. Just a kind of nice little. They've thought about that, I think, quite cleverly and done a nice job. So back under the Essentials tool, this is where I think Luminar has a kind of real advantage. It does use artificial intelligence to help you process images, and there's two options under the Essentials tool. There's the AI Enhance and AI Structure. I'm going to do AI Enhance first, and there's two options: AI Accent and AI Sky Enhancer. And if I go AI Accent and just start moving, you can see the effect it's having on the image, and it actually does a really good job. I'll go right up to 100 just to kind of demonstrate. But what I think is clever is it brings out the shadows, it brings out some of the color, but it does it selectively. So some of the shadows have come out and brightened up. Some of the highlights have darkened down. Some of the color has come out. Some of the color has changed. So it's almost kind of as if I don't know how the artificial intelligence works, but it does a really good job on picking out what are the key elements of the image, what needs to be brighter, what needs to be darker, what needs more saturation. So it does a really good job with just that one slider. And then Sky Enhance obviously focuses on the sky. So I'll bring that up all the way just so you can see. I probably wouldn't kind of go that far if I was processing this for my own use, but kind of just to demonstrate. Another nice thing about Luminar is there's a little button here on the top of the panel that you can show on and off, to see what happened, or a couple of other options up in the middle of the screen here. Looks like an eye. Click on that, before, after, or even split your screen and show you before and after. Now, obviously, I've processed that image a bit in an extreme manner just for demonstration purposes. So that's AI Enhance, and you can see that is now white because I've made the alterations. AI Structure looks at the contrast and some of the details. So it does, again, a good job of applying the contrast in the right sort of places and some of the kind of detail in the right places. If you go right up to 100, you then get the opportunity. That's kind of up to 100. Boost lets you go even further. So you probably would never end up with an image that's boosted to 100 and then up to another 100. But it shows you how clever this is, how clever it is in picking out the relevant parts of the image and kind of applying the alteration. So I'll just switch that back down to about there. Color is exactly what you'd expect. So you've got your saturation and vibrance. Might drop my saturation a bit, boost my vibrance a bit. But I like this little color cast tool here. If you there's not really a color cast in this image, but it does work quite well of just removing the color cast quite quickly. I'll come back to black and white conversion, but Detail Enhancer is your sharpening tool. So you have just a slider down here that is just sharpen, and it applies sharpening right across the image. Um, but there's three sliders above that, small, medium, and large details, and that allows you to be a bit kind of bit more selective. So small details has quite a noticeable effect right across the image. Obviously, medium somewhere in between. Large details is a bit more selective, so it essentially only looks at the edges. I think it doesn't sharpen the whole image. It looks at the edges of things that should be sharp. So it's nice that you get that opportunity to kind of be a bit more controlled. Then denoise, and you can imagine kind of what denoise does. It's nice that you've got the luminosity and color options. Um, and this image isn't very noisy, but it does work well. Um, Landscape enhancer is an interesting one because you've got dehaze, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and kind of it has quite a kind of interesting impact. But then there's golden hour. If I move golden hour, what it does is it warms up the image. You can see the sunset in this image. The sun was setting over my left hand shoulder. Um, it brings the warmth of the sunset into the image, or I guess if it was sunrise, brings the warmth of the sunrise in. So that's a kind of clever bit of work they've done there. And then foliage enhancer. Instead of going into your colours and having to look at the greens and the yellows and the browns individually, foliage does a good job of just boosting them all at the same time. So if I go right up, you can see that that green's gone kind of unrealistic, but it does a good job of controlling all of those colours that you would expect in kind of leaves and trees and whatnot at one go. So it's really powerful tools just with one single slider. And then I'll come back to black and white, but the other thing here, add your vignette, give yourself a bit of kind of focus on the center of the image, or I say the center of the image. I'll do this so it's extreme. If I click on choose subject, crosshairs come up, and I can choose the point where my vignette is applied, which I think is quite nice. So I've done a bit of quick editing there. If I was taking my time, it would look different. But just a before and after, just a before and after. I've moved a couple of sliders. I've been really quick about it, but look how quickly you can make a change to your image um, using those powerful single sliders that you get under Essentials in Luminar. So I said I'd come back to black and white, and this is an unedited image. It hasn't been straightened or anything. Maybe that'll be another video. But just wanted to talk about black and white conversion because there's a nice little thing you can do in black and white. So just going to click on black and white and convert. It says convert to black and white. Really simple. Converts to black and white. But if you choose saturation, the roof on this lighthouse and then these cranes are red. And if you want to add back in that color, just go with your red slider, boost it, and the color's back in. So if you like to do those images, black and white images where you have selective coloring, it's really, really easy to do in Luminar. Nice, it's nice idea, nice touch, and nicely executed. So underneath the Essentials tool here is the Creative tool, and as you would think, this gives you the opportunity to apply all sorts of creativity to your image. Um, so you can make it more dramatic. What I like about these tools is you move one slider and it has lots of impact. It's not just one element of the image that is being altered. It's a combination, and Luminar's very clever in that way. And there's you can add sun rays in and all sorts of things. It is all about creativity. This panel, you can make things look more mystical, and I can imagine in using this tool, for example, for a forest shot and kind of making it look a bit more kind of almost fairy tale. So I really, really like kind of playing with these. I'm not sure I'd use them all that much in images that were going to go into a magazine, for example, because they're probably a bit too creative. But They work very well. Now, the ones that I want to spend a little bit more time on these two tools here. There's the AI sky replacement and AI augmented sky. Now, Luminar, I think, is quite famous for what you can do with your skies and how this works. And it does demonstrate the power of um, uh, Luminar and the kind of how clever it is. So I've got this image of a fort on the coast. Um, if I wanted to replace the sky, just come into sky replacement and choose. There's some preset skies. Let's try Starry Night 2. Luminar has a bit of a think, and look at that. Look how clever that is. It's replaced the sky with this Starry Night. But if I look in the distance where the buildings are, it's actually worked out that that's a wind turbine. It hasn't replaced that. That's a wind turbine. It hasn't replaced that. Very, very, very clever. And you can then make further alterations. You can alter the lighting in the foreground. I know there's a little bit of water here. You probably can't see it, but it's actually realized that that's water and should be a reflection. So there's a reflection of the sky in the water. Just so powerful, so clever, and it kind of demonstrates how good Luminar is at kind of helping you with your photography. However, the issue I have with it is that image is impossible. It isn't possible to take that image of Perch Rock and the Milky Way behind it. So what I'm actually doing is creating artwork, which is fine. I'm a photographer. I'm not an artist, so I would never use this tool to do that. If you're an artist, I understand that you can do that, and that's fine. The issue that I'm starting to see, and I've seen it quite a lot on Instagram already, is some of these cloud scenes and some of these sunset scenes are starting to appear in people's work, and it's because they've used this tool to replace them. So people are taking the option of replacing their sky and then kind of forwarding the image and selling the image, as it were, on Instagram as if it's something that they've created. I don't mind them using this tool, but if they're using this tool, I think they should declare that it's actually a Luminar sky and not the original sky. Just wanted to show you how augmented sky works as well. It's a bit of fun, but you can. So I've gone back to that Milky Way image, but I could uh, add a giraffe in apparently, or maybe an eagle. So or how about well, let's have a look. I can add a plane in. So obviously this is now kind of venturing into the kind of world of artwork rather than the kind of world of photography. Um, but I do think it's a demonstration of just how clever um, uh, kind of Luminar is and how sophisticated it is as a tool. And then the final set of tools I wanted to look at is just at the bottom of the four is Pro. And this is where you come and finesse your image. I would describe the essentials options as kind of the broad brush strokes, and then Pro is the kind of the fine work that you do. So you've got a selection of tools to choose from. Um, so contrast, for example, just allows you to kind of change the image with a kind of a softer touch. So you'll have made your kind of main changes in essentials, but you come down to these tools here, and you can alter the shadows, contrast, and change your gradient. A gradient actually is quite a clever way they've done this. So if I set my gradient, I'm going to move the tool kind of up to the top of the image. Maybe the exposure should come down a bit, kind of move my contrast. What I think they've done that's really clever is that's the top of the image. If I choose then bottom of the image, Luminar allows me to edit the bottom of the image. I think that is really clever. I think it's really clever that you don't, in some photo processing software, you'd have to put another gradient in at the bottom to make those alterations. Luminar's giving you the option to do the top and the bottom separately, which I think, A plus for creativity and the thought process. But the rest of the tools here as well are about that kind of fine work that you do. So you've got your kind of dodge and burn tool, which is all about kind of painting in and boosting the highlights. You use the bracket keys to make the brush bigger or smaller, but then you just kind of paint away and maybe brighten or darken the image. Um, so I've just switched to this photo to demonstrate color enhancer because obviously I couldn't do it in a black and white photograph, but kind of color enhancer. Again, you've got a lot of tools here, and you can play and make alterations to your heart's content. You can go really funky, but I'd recommend if you're using Luminar, just have a play around because every image has got a different palette, so you'll need to kind of respond to that accordingly by kind of making these changes. Uh, but it's great to have that kind of extra opportunity or extra detail available in this panel here. And then photo filter is uh, quite wacky. Give yourself a migraine messing around with those. So I'll leave that alone. And split toning is probably a kind of another whole video because there's a bit of an art in itself. So I'll maybe leave that one for now and do another film. So then the final thing I would say is just about exporting images. You just click this button up here and click export, and up comes your options. The thing I think that is missing, and the thing I miss from here, is the opportunity to add a watermark. I add watermarks to my images that go on Facebook and kind of Instagram and places like that. So if Luminar are listening and kind of have the capacity to add in a watermark function there, yes, please. But yeah, that's the quick tour around the tools in Luminar.
So obviously, I've kind of covered the basics. If I'm honest, I'm still learning the software, but I've covered the basics. Looked at the stuff that I think is really good. Looked at the stuff that I think maybe needs a bit of tweaking. But I think the nice thing about kind of Luminar is there is a continual update process. So I hope you found that useful. Do share your comments below. Have you used it? Do you use it? Let me hear your thoughts. And don't forget that discount code. And maybe as I kind of get more used to the software and some of the capabilities, I'll share some of those videos as well. So thanks for watching. Just going to have a cup of tea from my championship league winning cup. And I'll see you next time. Cheers. Bye.